can you just tell me a bit about Michael and your life together as husband and wife?
We just had, the normal day-to-day life of a family with 3 kids. He was diagnosed in April 2013. And I just remember the face of the doctor giving us the news. The grief has evolved. At first it was very intense and I had no choice but to get on with life.
I just wanted to touch a little bit about dating. What's that experience been like? Welcome to the Life and Loss podcast. I'm Hannah and today I'm joined by Marbellys, who lost her husband Michael to advanced bowel cancer in 2016. Marbellys has not only faced the heartbreak of losing a partner, but also the immense challenge of caring for Michael while raising a family and navigating her own cancer diagnosis. Today we'll talk about the impact of grief, the complexities of moving forward, including dating after loss. Welcome Marbellys, thank you so much for joining me. First of all, can you just tell me a bit about Michael and your life together as husband and wife?
Well, Michael and I met in 1998 through mutual friends, and we started our life together as a young couple. We got married about 3 years after that, and started a family. Eventually moved down to Poole because we used to live in London, and we just had the normal day-to-day life of a family with 3 kids and working, taking them to activities, just like all relationships, up and down, and the constant juggling of responsibilities. But on balance, it was a very happy marriage life.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, if you could take me back to the moment where Michael got his diagnosis, what was that like for you and what impact did it have on you and your children?
Well, that day will forever be ingrained in my mind. He'd been not feeling too well for quite a few months, and that winter before his diagnosis was a very cold winter. We had a few days of snow, and one of the things we were noticing with him, and we were both noticing it, is that his fingers were blue and his lips would get blue as well, but we just thought, oh, he's just not coping with the cold as well as he used to. And then he started complaining about feeling quite lethargic, and eventually, after a lot of cajoling from me, he went to see the doctor, to see the GP, and he was referred to have blood tests. And at first they thought, oh, he's just anemic, but then when the blood test results came back, he was anemic, but dangerously so, and eventually was referred for a scan. And the scan then followed on to more investigations, and he was diagnosed in April 2013. And I just remember the face of the doctor giving us the news. And when they bring in a nurse into the room, you do realise that that's not going to be very good news. Suddenly the room fills up with lots of people. And yes, it was immediate, the diagnosis was straight away, it is cancer. We just don't know how advanced it is and whether it's spread. And just unleashed a roller coaster of emotions, and suddenly you've got appointment after appointment after appointment to attend, and you're managing, I was managing my job and the kids, and Michael was working as well, so it went all in a bit of a blur. But I do remember eventually going to see the oncologist for full diagnosis. By that point, we knew it was bowel cancer, and it was to tell us that it was stage 4 already, and that he needed to start treatment pretty much that week, and there was no delay. Basically, there could not be any delay. And the reason why he was so anemic was because it was in his bowel and he was losing blood through his bowel. We used to have an inside joke because Michael was 13 years older than me, and we met when I was 25, and so he was nearly 40. And I remember saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm dating an old man." And we always used to have this inside joke that he would die first and I'd just be happy-go-lucky young widow. Unfortunately, with that diagnosis, suddenly that inside joke became true. And it's awful.
Mm. And at the time when you had all of this news, you also had your own health concerns as well?
Not yet.
Okay.
I hadn't yet. That my diagnosis came 3 years after that. 2 years after that. No, not yet. I hadn't yet. I'd been having some symptoms, but there hadn't been any suspicion of cancer yet.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I just had to put aside whatever was going on with me and concentrate fully on supporting him.
Yeah. And how did you manage at that time? You're not only a wife, you were caring for him, you're working as well, and raising a family. How did you cope?
I don't know, Hannah. It's the truth. I think when you're thrown into that situation, you have no options really but to get on with it. And, you know, the logistics had to be worked out. I guess we did have a group of very supportive friends who stepped in and helped out a lot with the children primarily, because for me what was important was to know that the children were being well looked after so that I could concentrate on supporting Michael. So plenty of play dates and sleepovers and people picking up the kids from school so that I could be with Michael whenever he had chemotherapy. And he went through many surgeries, not here in Poole. We actually had to travel to Basingstoke, where he had very specialised surgery. And yeah, friends stepped in. And it's a bit of a blur, actually. I don't know, we had... I was always the one in charge of the logistics in the family, and then suddenly I became this super organised person. I don't know. It just happened. It had to happen, and you don't give it much thought. You just do it.
Yeah,
And we had to be very honest with the kids, because it was for me, I felt that honesty was the only way we were going to buy in their cooperation.
Yeah.
Even though they were quite young. We tried to keep them as well informed as possible, so that to try and take away the mystery out of it. I didn't think that keeping things secret from them would be beneficial for anyone.
No.
Yeah.
And sadly, his illness progressed, and eventually he was admitted to Forest Holme Hospice for his end-of-life care. What difference did that hospice care make to you and to Michael at that time?
I always say that Forest Holme became like a sanctuary for us, because up to that point it was really traumatic to look after Michael at home. He was paralysed from his chest down, and I was having to do absolutely everything for him. And we did have one occasion where, because he was a very stubborn person, it was a good quality sometimes, but at times it wasn't. He was very determined, and having been given advice from the hospital that he needed bed rest, he did not follow the advice and decided to come downstairs and actually collapsed at the bottom of the stairs because he couldn't actually walk very well by that point. And I suddenly found myself having to lift this man who was 6'2" and weighed over 85 kilos, lift him off the floor and drag him onto our sofa. And then things progressed really quickly from there, and we needed a lot of help at home, and he was in a lot of pain. And it took a lot of talking to him to convince him that the best care for him would be a Forest Home. And then when he was eventually admitted, and it was the 22nd of December 2015, and I remember the crew coming to get him, the ambulance crew coming to get him, and then I followed, and I arrived at the hospice, and suddenly I realized he was so well looked after, and everything, all of his needs were being taken care of, and suddenly I could be his wife again, because up to that point our relationship had completely shifted. I wasn't anymore his wife, I was his carer. And by being his carer, sometimes I had to switch off my emotions to be able to cope with the care side of things. But that also meant that perhaps I wasn't being the softest of people around him. And I had so many things to take care of that, it was very, very difficult. So for him to go into Forest Home suddenly, it took away that pressure, and I was his wife again, and I could just be the supportive, emotional person that he needed, rather than constantly having to look after the practical side of things. Yeah. And it also gave me a breathing space to be mum to my kids, because at that point I was literally farming off the care of my children to anyone who would offer. It gave me the opportunity to be mum again, be wife again, and kind of be me again.
Yeah. We will take a moment to pause whilst you reflect on your own personal experience of loss. If you feel able, share your thoughts by commenting below. We hope that by sharing this personal experience, you will feel less alone in your grief. And Marbellys, if you don't mind just talking about after Michael sadly died, those early days of grief, what were they like for you?
They were horrendous. I mean, he'd already been in the hospice for 3 and a bit weeks, so I had been sleeping in my own bed alone for that time. But somehow my brain hadn't quite caught on to the fact that that's it, he's not coming back. It's not like he's on holidays. Yeah. He's never coming back. And I remember waking up that first morning after he died on a Friday, and waking up on a Saturday morning and reaching across the bed, he used to sleep to my left, and realizing it was empty. It had been empty for the last 3.5 weeks, but it suddenly dawned on me, that's it. It will always be empty. He will not be there. And I remember that we'd come back quite late that night, the night before, and I left one of his, he had a bag that we'd taken stuff to the hospice, and I brought it back. And I found the T-shirt that he'd worn the night before, and I just put it on and collapsed on the floor and cried. That was awful, and that continued to be the same for quite a few weeks after. And I remember it felt like I lost my mind, you know. I didn't want to shower. And I wore his t-shirt and his tracksuit bottoms all the time. Didn't get out of those clothes. I slept in them. I walked around in them. And I don't remember eating. I remember cooking for the children and looking after them, but I don't remember being able to eat. Sleep was non-existent. And people's platitudes made me angry. Whenever people would say things like, oh, he's in a better place, or things will get better, or, you know, just made me really angry.
Yeah.
I was very angry for a very long time.
Yeah, yeah. And did your grief change over time? It's been 9 years now, and what does that look like over the last 9 years?
Yeah, obviously now, and also at the very beginning, it was difficult to access the good memories of my relationship with Michael. All I had was the suffering of the previous 3 years of his illness. And that was really hard, and it took a very long time. I think it took a good 2 years before I realized that I could remember him as the healthy person that he was.
Yeah.
Before that, all I could remember was the trauma and how ill he was, how much in pain he was. But yeah, it took about 2 years for me to start recalling the happy memories. And to be able to see him in my mind as the healthy, active, sporty person that he was, strong, funny, you know. And yeah, I guess the grief has evolved. At first it was very intense and daily, hourly, to the minute, you know, there was no pause in it. And then as time went on, and I guess I had no choice but to get on with life. And yeah, it is now 9 years, and it mostly takes me by surprise when it does happen. And it does happen, and it's unpredictable. I don't know what's going to trigger it. You know, sometimes I listen to some of our favorite music that we liked, and I'm okay. And then suddenly somebody might say a phrase that he would have said, and that would send me off.
Yeah.
And, you know, at first it was very hard to recover from those moments of grief. Now, when it happens, yeah, it might affect my day, but I'm okay the following day.
Yeah.
The milestones are still hard. You know, like my children achieving things and him not being there to witness it.
Yeah.
Those are still very, very hard. And, you know, celebrating, like he would have been 65 just because his birthday was on New Year's Eve. He would have been 65 this New Year's Eve just gone. Yeah. And that was difficult. That was difficult.
And I just wanted to touch a little bit about dating and meeting new people after you're grieving your husband. What's that experience been like?
I think, well, the first thing is I want to say is that this is my experience, and I don't want anyone to listen to this and think, oh, I should be feeling that, or I should be doing that, or why am I not out there dating already? Please, it's not that. This is my experience, and it's the person that I am, but it's also Michael and I were always very honest with each other. And we actually had this conversation many times during our marriage. What would happen if one of us became incapacitated, you know, had to go into a care home or something like that? Would the other person be expected to not have a romantic life? And we both agreed that we wouldn't be expecting that of each other.
Yeah.
Respectfully, obviously. But we all have needs, we have emotional needs, and we would never expect the other person to not meet those needs if that's what they needed.
Yeah.
Similarly, if one of us died, well, I was the first one to encourage him to make sure he went out and find somebody good. As long as the kids were all right, he was entitled to have a romantic life. And similarly, I mean, the only thing he did say is that if he didn't approve of the person, he would come and pull my legs in the middle of the night. Not yet happened. So with that in mind, I think it was maybe 18 months after he died that I decided to try dating. I signed up for the dating apps, and because that's how dating happens nowadays. And yes, I did meet somebody. And I did go on to have a relationship that lasted 7.5 years. It was tough. It was tough because I had to restrain myself from constantly comparing this new man to Michael.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Michael set a very high bar when it came to loving. And so I felt I didn't want to be unfair to this person by constantly comparing them to Michael. But it's inevitable.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm out dating again. Even though that relationship finished. And it's only because I always think, well, what would Michael say if he were here? And he'd be the first one to say, you're too young to not have romance in your life.
Yeah.
And it's always with that message in my head that that's how I approach dating. But I speak to Michael all the time, and I always say, oh, do you approve of this guy? I haven't yet had any signals, so I don't know. I'm assuming he does. But it's difficult. It's difficult because, you know, I have to make sure that I'm taking into account my children's feelings. And they're much older now. But, you know, when I first started dating 18 months after Michael died, it was difficult for them.
Yeah.
And my son said, I do not want to meet anybody that you are dating. And my daughter, my youngest, was very unhappy about the whole thing. My eldest was fine with it, you know, because she understood a bit more, being older, you know. Yeah, but it took a long time for my two youngest to approve of my choice of partner. Yeah. And now they're not so caught up. They're okay. Whenever I tell them I'm going on a date, they ask nice questions. You know, who is this and what do they do, and they are interested. Yeah. And now that they're adults themselves, I think it's easier for them to accept that that's what I'm going to do. What was difficult was the judgment of some of the people I used to call my friends. Yeah. They're not friends anymore. That was difficult, to be judged in a way, because I felt that they were not curious about why I wanted to date again. They just simply judged, and I realized that it's difficult for people to put themselves into your shoes, especially because I was 43 when Michael died. Yeah. At a time when you're not expecting to be widowed, yeah, I had a fair bit of judgment from people. And sometimes still now, when I tell people that, you know, that I started dating 18 months after Michael died and that I did have a relationship, I still have people who are shocked when I tell them. Yeah.
And last question for you. For anyone else who's grieving the loss of a loved one, a partner, what advice would you give to them if they were considering starting to date again?
I would say, first of all, if it helps them, to write down the reasons why they want to start dating again. When you start dating again after widowhood, as a person you are quite emotionally vulnerable. And if you have friends that you can talk to, you can trust, talk to them about it. But also be mindful that you will be judged. And obviously each person is individual, you know, each person is different. Whenever I have found people who said you cannot do that, I always say, well, I'll show you. But that's not everybody. So I know that some people might feel hurt by the judgment, but also know that you can get support from other widowed people. I wouldn't judge another widowed person if they decided to date the day after the person died. You know, that's...
Yeah, everybody's different,
Everybody's
aren't they?
different.
And everyone copes differently.
Yeah, so I would say write down the reasons why you want to date and, you know, really consider it before. It is quite a vulnerable position to put yourself out there. But trust that it's okay to love again.
Yeah.
And trust that there will be people who will love you again. It is okay to do it.
And it doesn't mean that you don't love your
Oh,
former.
no, I can tell you, you never stop loving the person. You never stop loving your spouse. Never. That love never dies.
Yeah.
If anything, I think I've used it as a measuring tool for how I want to be loved.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Marbellys, and thank you for listening to the Life and Loss podcast. If you'd like more information on our work, you can visit our website, which is forestholmehospice.org.uk. Thank you. Please remember to like, comment and share this episode to help us reach more people. At Forest Holme Hospice Charity, we offer this podcast and many other resources to support people through life's most difficult times. If our work has made a difference to you, please consider making a donation by visiting the link in the description. Thank you.